Hi, I'm Joshua Coop, and this is my presentation for sensitivity analysis as a tool for capital budgeting. Let's go ahead and get into it. To get started, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what sensitivity analysis is, the qualitative and quantitative steps to get there, how project risk can be incorporated into a capital budget analysis, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at a real-world example. All right, so to begin, what is sensitivity analysis? It is the tool used to assess changes in the key assumptions or inputs that affect the projected outcomes of capital investments. The goal is to understand how the investments or the business's return to those changes in those variables in order to make business decisions. Our textbook, Business Analysis with Microsoft Excel from Carlberg, says that sensitivity analysis helps you calculate the importance of a particular assumption. This positions you to focus on the critical drivers and to avoid wasting time on drivers that have little effect on the outcome. So, in simple terms, sensitivity analysis changes one variable at a time that allows us to see how much each one will affect the total outcome. In order to start the sensitivity analysis, you need to take a look at the qualitative and the quantitative variables that you'll be adjusting in these scenarios. In the qualitative steps, you are to identify the potential costs and benefits rather than trying to quantify them. These steps are going to start with identifying the variables such as sales volume, sales price, operating cost, and the discount rate that can all influence a project. The next step is to identify the potential internal and external factors that could cause changes in these key variables. After that, the next step would be to define the range that each of these variables has, and this can be done by looking at past data, industry trends, and other expert opinions. Next in the qualitative analysis is to prioritize each of these variables and their impact. After that, you can now take a look at other influences that could be affecting these variables before moving on to the next quantitative steps in the sensitivity analysis. In the quantitative steps, the first thing to do is to determine the base case. To do this, calculate the project's key financial metrics such as net present value, real rate of return, and the payback period. Using the most likely expected values for all variables, this is considered the base case. The next step would be to select which variables to analyze. So you're going to pick one variable and adjust it while keeping all other variables constant, and this will give you different outcomes. You should do this adjusting the same variable with different numbers to see how that changes your outcome. Next is to do this for all other variables and to see how that also changes your results. Last but not least is to interpret these results and make your informed decision for the company. Now, let's take a look at how a project's risk can be incorporated into a capital budget analysis. The first thing you want to do is to identify the risk factors. These include the variables that are most likely to introduce uncertainty into the project. Then you want to find the range for each risk factor to estimate the range of possible outcomes. Next, you want to assess the sensitivity by comparing how sensitive the project's financial outcomes are, the changes in each variable, and then you're ready to turn that into a decision. Let's take a look at a real-world example. Tesla used a lot of debt to keep its operations afloat. At their peak, Tesla had a liability to asset debt ratio of 90%. However, recent years, they've corrected this and shifted the structure from using debt to now using more profits and free cash flow, bringing this ratio down to about 40%, which is a much healthier ratio. They did this by assessing the risk of debt, which can be done through sensitivity analysis. Some of the variables that they most likely used were sales volumes, production costs, and different discount rates. From there, they determined the range that they might see in the sales costs and rates and adjusted those variables one at a time. After seeing the different effects from these changes, they could then make the best informed decision. To recap, we talked about what sensitivity analysis is, which is used to assess the changes of inputs and how they affect the projected outcomes. We talked about the qualitative and quantitative steps to conduct that analysis. And we talked about the project risk and how it can be incorporated into the analysis. And then lastly, we finished by taking a look at a real-world example with Tesla and how they were able to turn around their high debt ratio to a less riskier ratio.